Thanks for joining us. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for being here today for our webinar, Smart Hacks for Ethical AI in 2024. We've got a lot of ground to cover and little time to do it in, so let's dig right in. This is just a half-hour webinar, so stick around because we've got some polls and some things going on, so I think you guys will have fun in the webinar. I'm Tracy Gardner, the Global Marketing Director at VLink Inc., an award-winning U.S. IT services and staffing company, and your host for the webinar today. We do a regular webinar series, by the way, so look for those on LinkedIn. We're so glad to have all of you here today. Hopefully some of you are prior registrants who have attended. We'll introduce our panelists in just a few minutes, but first let's go over the agenda real quick. Today, our host will be discussing smart hacks for ethical AI in 2024. You know, some would say we are in the Wild West when it comes to generative AI tools like ChatGPT and others we've heard about. Companies are moving at breakneck speed in using this innovative technology, and there are few, if any, guardrails in place. Kind of concerning. Copyright infringements come into play, among other things, and most of us, including myself, don't really know the law or how to navigate those in certain times ahead regarding AI ethics, which could put companies at unknowing legal risks. In this webinar, we're going to learn how to prioritize AI ethical practices to avoid costly mistakes, scandals, or fines. We'll learn about ethics with GPT for long-term profitability, how to build stakeholder trust, and how to avoid high costs and ensure smooth operations. And of course, you're going to have the opportunity to ask questions of the panelists. So just feel free to put your questions, if you've got them now, in the chat or Q&A panel, and we'll get to those throughout the webinar. So you may be ready to safeguard the AI strategy in your organization, but you feel overwhelmed by how to get started. I know I do at times too. That's why our two panelists are here. It is my pleasure to introduce John Murphy. He's an esteemed UConn professor specializing in digital media and design. Professor Murphy has over 4 decades of experience in the high-tech industry. He also founded the Social Media Analytics Center at UConn. He is currently collaborating with the Belgian government on putting ethical AI into place in that country. Also, Nikhil Khandelwal is joining us, the VP of Engineering at VLink Inc. Nikhil has worked with GPT tools like ChatGPT extensively and can really shine some light on how corporations are dealing with the ethical part of this. One housekeeping item before we get started. Once the session is closed by us, again, you will have the opportunity to stay afterward in the webinar. If after we end it and ask questions of John and Nikhil, just have a conversation, casual conversation. We'll open the mics up and get you guys going on that if you want to do that as well. Now let's start off with the poll. The question will appear on your screen and you can answer accordingly. Feel free to vote for more than one answer. What do you feel is your biggest ethical challenge while using AI and GPT in the workplace? And of course, it's multiple choice. And I want to give people time to answer. So when you're dealing with AI in the workplace, just click there on your screen. Hopefully the poll popped up on your screen. Is it accuracy? Is it privacy? Is it plagiarism you're concerned about? Or is it safety and security? And so, I'm not sure if the results are in yet, but hopefully they will be soon and we can see those. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to think about that. And then we can show the results and talk about those. And Taryn, who's our host today, thank you so much, Taryn. If you want to show the results, that would be great so that we can kind of discuss those. So accuracy, it looks like accuracy, privacy, plagiarism, but safety and security. Now that a little bit surprises me. I want to bring John in here to discuss that. John, does that surprise you?
A little bit, but not much. I think all of them, Tracy, are concerns of all of us, and safety and security, especially at the sea level, is most prominent. So that does not surprise me. There's potential for legal risk that we'll talk about today, caused by bias concerns. So I think safety and security, especially at the executive level, is the most talked about.
Yeah, and I would have said accuracy, I guess, but for myself, but I was a little surprised. Interesting results. We did a similar poll on LinkedIn last week, and I wanted to show those results real quick. We asked on LinkedIn, what ethical challenges concern you the most with AI in the tech world? And the results there are on the screen. Bias in algorithms and job displacement were the top concerns, along with data collection, and then AI in warfare and security. So security, showed up there in a different way,
Right.
which kind of surprises me, but you know, so interesting polls. John and Nikhil both will bring you in here as well. John, we're talking about how to prioritize AI ethical practices. Based on what you just saw on the results and stuff, what advice do you have for folks here? I know a lot of folks who register for this are in the C-suite. What would you say to them?
I think the first thing that we're looking for is a commitment top down to ethics in general with emerging technologies. And it has to be top down, Tracy. I think that's what makes it work. It can't just be the IT department or the business department, et cetera. It needs to be a top down commitment to buying into an ethically safe environment in the workplace for AI. And instead of it being overwhelming, Tracy, I would like to focus on, I talk to my clients like this. If we just focused on making AI usage not bad, that would be a great thing. Ethics can be a very broad term and phrase, but if we can really use AI so that it doesn't hurt anything, that would be a great step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nikhil, we've used AI at VLink. I mean, you're the VP of engineering. We've used it here. I know that we had a webinar a couple months ago where we actually used ChatGPT to build a microsite in under 30 minutes. It was amazing. It has potential to be transformative in the business landscape. How does a business balance the ethics of like a ChatGPT tool? And what do you tell the clients when you're working with them?
When we talk about ethics, like safety and security, there are some primary concerns about security, plagiarism, accuracy. So to find a right balance, we should know few things. One is if we can know the source of the data. Okay. What information, the key part to it, for AI, which kind of data it is trained on, what kind of information that we are putting into the system, because that is where all the enterprises are very concerned about. They are more than happy to take the benefits of these generative AI and other such tools, but it also brings a very risk of divulging their trade secrets, like intentionally or unintentionally by the team members. So this is where their primary concerns lie around.
And John, what would you say to that? I mean, he brings up a good point. Divulging trade secrets and stuff like that. How do companies safeguard that?
Well, I think there has to be a commitment within the organization, Tracy, toward transparency, user consent and privacy, bias mitigation. And if there's a commitment that we were speaking about earlier, every AI tool we use in the workplace, we've got to investigate it. We've got to figure out, this isn't Microsoft Excel. This is a very powerful tool. And we have to make sure and ask our vendors, how are they with data transparency? Do they get consent from users if, for example, we're using voice cloning? Is there any bias in your platform? And there are some regulations out there, and we can talk about that later. But I think we need to ask the vendors and the platforms for every tool we use in the workplace some very tough questions to go through an ethical audit, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah, very good idea. And please, for those of you in attendance, don't forget to put your questions in the chat. John and Nikhil would be happy to answer those. We'll get to those as they come through. Taryn will let me know those are there. Or John and Nikhil, if you see a question, just bring it up. You can interrupt. So, John, you are knee deep in this issue. You've spoken across the country. You've spoken at conferences. You're consulting with the Belgian government on the importance of ethics. Tell us about some of those conversations. What do they look like, and what should they look like at a corporation, at a company, big or small?
Right now, a lot of times people are confused as to regulations within their country or the countries they do business in. So there's a lot of confusion as to what the laws are. There's a lot of confusion as to how they should use it. On one hand, on the other hand, Tracy, what I'm seeing is a lot of companies don't want to get behind their competition. So they're using AI tools in order to, stay on top of their market, which brings a level of concern in different parts of organizations. So there's a constant tension between we need to use these tools and are we putting ourselves at risk? So that's where the ethical conversation comes in, which I think can put some executives at ease in their use of these tools by making sure there's mitigation in place to prevent legal ramifications and other concerns that they may have.
Yeah, for sure. Nikhil, you're the VP of engineering and you've dealt with this before. You deal with developers all the time. What do you tell your team? How do you safeguard it at our company? What do you say?
Okay. So 2 points over here. So when we talk about like the C-suite and the challenge what these AI tools bring into the system or AI in general, first is the privacy and the decision control. With the decision control, let's say with the AI tools we use, we tend to believe that they are smarter than us and hand over the decision to them at many points. So with that comes the problem of accountability. Like who owns that decision? So someone has to take that accountability. That is part one. And along other things, the concern for bias is huge because for any business, I would like to give one example from Amazon. So Amazon, they received millions of applications, so they could not have, so they developed a AI model to screen. But eventually they found out that the model had a bias for male candidates. So these kind of biases, that is of real concern, and they eventually stopped using that.
It's a problem.
So, yes. So to answer your question, like what I say to my developers is use the AI tools very judiciously, and you should always understand what kind of biases this system can bring.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you bring up some good points. Thanks, Nikhil. And John, you and I have spoken before about guardrails and the need for them. Talk about that, because I think sometimes we've kind of put the cart before the horse here. We really haven't thought about this that much. We're just going.
Well, in the past, I've been in the tech business for 40 years. The way we approached business over the last 30-something years, Tracy, was let's push it until it breaks, and then we'll figure out how to fix it. Yeah. Unfortunately, that didn't work with social media, and it definitely won't work with AI. So guardrails are critical, and I know that governments are doing their best, but it's very difficult for governments to keep up with this technology. And there are different rules and regulations in place in every country. So what I usually work with when I talk to students or work with clients is the guardrails are really critical inside the office place or the classroom. We've got to look at our ethical considerations. We've got to look at risk mitigation, fairness and accountability guardrails, transparency and explainability. Are the tools that we're using, are we able to explain how we're using them and why we're using them and be transparent about it? Are we complying with the regulations in our country? All this we need to do in order to gain public trust and acceptance, mitigate our own risks in the workplace, and then continually improve on all of the above, such that our consumer, our stakeholder, our employees, we all have confidence and trust as much as we can in the tools that we're using. So the guardrails are critical so that we don't go off the side of the road here.
Yeah.
And we're able to gain the trust of the people we're doing business with.
Absolutely. Because we want people to use it. We're not saying don't use it. Just
Right.
use it with caution, with ethics in mind, right?
Correct.
Absolutely.
And I know when it went mainstream a year ago, even though AI has been around for a long time, but it went mainstream a year ago, even in the classroom, Tracy, the
Yeah.
students were a little bit concerned. They weren't sure how to use it. And I encourage them to use AI in the classroom. I want them to practice and use their AI muscle.
Hmm.
And as we use it in the classroom, we have to be transparent about it. What AI tool did you use? Was it valuable? Did it help you? Did it help you save time? Was it biased? They have to do an evaluation of the tool they're using, be transparent about it, source it, and talk to the class about which tool they used, and then have a myriad of questions asked. So I encourage usage of it. This is not going away. It's going to be in every workplace, and we have to figure out how to use it and how to use it so that we don't break anything beforehand instead of waiting till we break things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you encourage students to use it because they should. And they're going to, those that are learning it now, they'll come into the workplace in a few years. And those will be the people that'll probably help us put the guardrails in place because we're still evolving so quickly. Let's do a second poll real quick. We'll put it up there on your screen. Just interested to see, what is your goal of AI in 2024 for those in attendance? Is it automated machine learning? We call it auto ML. Is it AI enabled conceptual design? Is it multimodal learning or teaching, improved language modeling, or other? Take a few minutes to look at the poll and give your answer, and then we'll look at the